My name is Tanita, and I have Huntington's disease, which is a rare neurodegenerative disease. I did not come from a family with a history of Huntington's disease. I happen to be the first person in my family that was diagnosed. And since then, two other relatives have been diagnosed. But I am the first person to bring it to the forefront in my family. So that's the unusual part about my situation compared to other people with Huntington's disease. And I was diagnosed in New York City. I was diagnosed in 2012. It took 2 years to get the diagnosis, the definitive diagnosis. I was told over and over again that when they were trying to find out what was wrong with me, that the one thing that they were certain about was that I did not have Huntington's because I'm African American. And I was told that African American people do not get Huntington's disease. I was told this repeatedly by numerous doctors in numerous institutions all across in New York City. My parents were tested, and my mom came back a genetic match. My mother is also positive with Huntington's disease, and my mom is currently in a nursing home. Since then, my sister was tested, and my sister is also positive. Not only am I positive, but I am symptomatic as well. So I have, lots of symptoms that are controlled with medications. I take a cocktail of drugs every 12 hours to control involuntary body movements, to help with my mood, to help with anxiety, to help with depression, to help with, just a host of symptoms that I have as a result of this disease. Initially, it all started with the wiggling involuntary movements of my toes. I did not know what that was. I assumed it was muscle spasms because I kept saying, what is this? I went to my doctor, showed my doctor. It was just he was just a regular doctor. And he said, "Are you doing that on purpose?" And I said, "No, I'm not doing this on purpose." And he was like, he said, this is definitely something neurological, and you need to see a neurologist. So that was my first journey towards going to a neurologist for help. That was my very first time ever going to a neurologist in my life. And by the time I went to the neurologist, movement had spread from my toes to my fingers, my upper trunk, my face. I even had vocal tics where I was making noises and I, couldn't stop. I had involuntary movements of the arms, the legs. It affected my balance, my gait, my ability to walk, and the ability to function. And I was scared. I was terrified. So I was tested for numerous things and one thing they kept saying was that, well, we're going to test you for lupus because Black people get lupus. And I kept getting lupus tests over and over again. Kept getting tested for Lyme disease. I kept getting tested for Sjogren's. It basically they ran out of things to test me for in this 2 year period from 2010 to 2012. I was tested for so many things, including HIV/AIDS, because I was told that a lot of Black people have AIDS. So therefore, they needed to test me for that. And all of that came back. All of these tests were negative. I was treated specifically towards the area of what they thought a Black person would possibly have. And it finally dawned on a person in 2011, well, the end of 2011. One of my doctors, she was a movement disorder specialist. And she said, "You know what? We're going to test you for Huntington's disease. I want to see if you have this. I don't think you have it, but I don't know. We're going to test you." So she ordered the test. I went and I gave blood, and her boss found out about it and actually made her cancel the test and told her that the reason was that he wanted her to cancel was because I was Black and Black people don't get Huntington's disease. So I was told over and over again, that's impossible. And then she told me, I understand if you go look for another doctor. It took me about another 7 months or so before I finally found the doctor who diagnosed me. I explained to him what happened and how the test was canceled because I was Black. And And I told him that, that's the last test that I had. And he said, you know what, we'll test you for that. That's going to be one of the many tests that I'm going to test you for. And so he did, and it came back positive, and I freaked out. I was extremely emotional, very upset. And I said, this can't be. How could all these doctors be wrong? You know, this has got to be a mistake. This can't be right. And so he said, okay, you know what? I'll test you again. And this time I'm going to test you in a different lab and see what happens. I got tested in a different lab, and the genetic results were the same, positive. And that's when I had to accept the diagnosis. And then my parents were tested after that, and one of them was the one who I got it from. I would like them to know that Huntington's disease comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. This is a genetic disease. This is not about race. And that most people in the United States, such as myself included, have multi ethnic backgrounds within their genetic makeup. And I want them to take that into consideration when they are assessing patients, especially patients of color, that they need to be more mindful of the fact that they may have multi ethnic backgrounds and other genetic possibilities may be in play when diagnosing them. Looking back, reflecting back on it, my symptoms were very unique as far as the way it presented itself. And what I mean by that is that it presented itself in a very classic textbook sort of way, where I started having the movements first. A lot of people with Huntington's disease do not have choreatic movements or involuntary movements. A lot of people will have other symptoms first. Before that, they'll have the psychiatric, they'll have the cognitive decline, and then they'll have some movement impairments. But I started out with movement problems first. And that should have been a clear sign that something was clearly wrong when the movement spread from the toes, the fingers, the upper trunk, the face, the arms, the legs. That should have been a clear indication that something was definitely in the realm of being neurological. And also, the one thing that could have easily been ruled out with a simple blood test is Huntington's. I am very passionate about reaching out, especially to the medical community and academics, a lot, out there who study neurological diseases, specifically Huntington's disease. I want to get out there and show them that what they're learning in their textbooks or what they're learning in their medical schools may or may not be as accurate. And they need to understand that people of color can, in fact, and do have this disease. The purpose of writing my book, We Exist, I wrote this book to basically tell my story. I document my medical journey, the journey of how it was a 2-year battle, and also the extenuating circumstances that came together to create the presentation of the disease at a very much earlier than anticipated. Based on my CAG number or CAG repeat number, I should not have been showing symptoms until much later in life. Like my mother is older, and my mother has, she's very much symptomatic. We have the same genetic marker number, and I should have been showing symptoms much later. But because of an environmental trigger, I was exposed to carbon monoxide and gas for about 22 months, breathing it in, low levels. And they believe, going back, doctors believe that that is what was the catalyst that triggered the genetic expression to surface at such a young age. I started showing symptoms at 35, and according to doctors and scientists, people with my CAG number show symptoms between 65 and 75 years old. So my CAG number was low. The lower your CAG number is, the older you are typically when you may or may not be expressing the gene. I'm definitely excited about the fact that I found a cocktail of drugs to take to manage my symptoms so that I could have a very high quality of life. That is important. And I want to, express to other people that just because you have this diagnosis doesn't mean that this is a death sentence. And I want them to understand that you can treat symptoms and you have to give people hope because a lot of people with this disease are very suicidal, and suicide or being suicidal is common within our community, the Huntington's community. And I just, and I've been down that road, and I definitely want to help other people to understand that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You can manage your symptoms. And if you have the right doctors and you have the right medicine or the medications, you can still live your best. Well, I would definitely recommend to a person who's diagnosed for the first time to definitely give yourself time to process the diagnosis, process it with a healthcare professional, someone, that you trust. It's important that you process this and go through the grieving process, because there is a grieving process, because this is a really serious diagnosis, and a lot of people go through an array of emotions. And I would say definitely to process it with a therapist, form your dream team. And what I mean by dream team is your dream team of doctors. Like I have a neurologist, I have a psychiatrist, I have a psychologist, I have a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech therapist. I have all types of people on it. They all work together under one institution. I would say stick to having everybody under the same roof to make your life easier as far as going to appointments. And I would also take it day by day. Don't get ahead of yourself. I mean, it's good to plan for the future, but don't get carried away with the what ifs, because you can drive yourself nuts, worried about, oh my God, am I going to die in 5 years? Because I was told to start looking for nursing homes in 2012. I was told to just start looking. And I was told by 2024 that I would be in one. And it's 2024 and I'm not in one, and all I can tell you is that take each day, day by day, and address your symptoms with your doctors and your dream team, your healthcare team. And whatever is most prominent, go with that first. So if you're having cognitive problems, deal with the cognitive issues, such as what I did was I actually enrolled back in college. That's what I did to help with me cognitively. And I was advised by a neuropsychologist and psychiatrist actually to take one class at a time to help with my cognitive impairments that I had at the time. And it has significantly improved. And you would be surprised at how you can retrain your brain to learn new things or learn in a different way. Just because you have some cognitive problems does not mean that you're not able to learn and you're not able to, function. I would encourage people I take it from a holistic standpoint. So I practice mindfulness. I incorporate techniques like I do yoga, I do breathing exercises to help with my mood. I do walking on a regular basis. I journal. I incorporate things that bring me joy. I like to write. I love to paint. I love animals. I love, and I just look at take each day as it comes. And I would say that's what I've done is I found joy in the small things. And I celebrate the small victories. The fact that I was able to even function today, right now, in this interview, I am excited to be here and grateful to be here.